The planet Valora was bathed in a soft violet light as its twin suns began to set. Across the city of Alindra, a grand crowd gathered at the Crystal Arena, a place where centuries-old traditions were kept alive. Today was the day of the decennial mating ritual, a ceremony that decided the next royal partner for the alien princess. Liara, the arena sparkled with crystal towers and glimmering platforms where nobles, warriors, and spectators from all corners of Valora watched with anticipation. Princess Liara stood atop the central dais, her flowing robes shimmering in the light. Her heart beat faster than she expected. The ritual was supposed to be a moment of pride and celebration, but for her it was a moment of fear. She had always been careful about her reputation. In her culture, choosing the wrong mate in public could bring shame not just to her, but to her entire family. "Remember, daughter," her advisor murmured, leaning close. "You must choose a mate who will honor your lineage and strengthen our alliances." Liara nodded politely, but her mind was elsewhere. She had seen the strongest candidates, towering warriors with shining armor, eyes full of courage and reputations that echoed across planets. Each one was a perfect example of Valara's ideals: strength, intelligence, and honor. But she felt a strange pressure, an invisible weight that made her question every choice. She scanned the arena, heart pounding. The candidates were all lined up before her, waiting patiently. Each one moved with confidence, demonstrating combat skills, strategy, and grace. They were everything a princess could wish for. Yet Lyra's gaze kept drifting toward the edge of the crowd, toward a figure who seemed almost invisible. He was a servant, dressed in simple gray robes, standing quietly with his hands folded. His eyes were calm, observing everything without urgency or pride. Unlike the others, he made no effort to impress anyone. He was small in stature, unassuming, and clearly not a warrior. He looked ordinary, almost weak, and yet Liara felt something unusual about him. Perhaps it was his calmness. Perhaps it was the way he didn't try to draw attention. Her pulse quickened. A sudden thought struck her. What if she chose him? No one would expect it. She would escape the ridicule that could come from choosing the wrong great warrior. The crowd would be shocked, but she could manage their opinions. It was risky, but in a different way. It felt safe. Before she could overthink, Liara made her decision. She stepped forward and pointed to the servant. "I choose him," she announced, her voice steady, despite the storm of whispers that immediately erupted across the arena. Gasps filled the air. The elite warriors stiffened, their pride wounded. Spectators murmured, trying to make sense of the princess's choice. The nobles exchanged worried glances, and her advisor's face turned pale. The servant blinked once, then bowed low. "As you wish, princess," he said quietly, his voice gentle and controlled. There was no hesitation, no sign of surprise, no hint of arrogance. Lyra's cheeks flushed. She had expected ridicule, but the immediate silence after her declaration was more disorienting than laughter. The crowd was stunned. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. As the ceremony continued, the servant followed her to the private ceremonial chamber, maintaining his calm demeanor. He moved carefully, but there was a subtle strength in his steps. Liara noticed it, though she dismissed it as the grace of someone used to palace life. She kept her distance, unsure why she felt both nervous and oddly protected in his presence. Inside the chamber, the ritual required the princess to perform a delicate dance, symbolizing unity and harmony between the chosen mate and herself. As she twirled, her foot caught on the edge of the ceremonial platform, threatening to topple her. In an instant, the servant reached out, steadying her with one strong hand. Liora's eyes widened. Thank you," she stammered, her voice softer than usual. "It was nothing, princess," he replied, bowing slightly. His calmness was remarkable, and Liara felt an unexpected warmth in her chest. For the first time, she wondered if her choice had been wise, or if it had been destiny. Despite her embarrassment, she couldn't ignore the ease with which he handled the moment. Every movement, every word, was precise. Yet he showed no desire for attention, no need for praise. Liara found herself stealing glances at him, trying to read the man who seemed so ordinary but acted in ways so extraordinary. Meanwhile, outside the chamber, the strongest candidates were not idle. They murmured among themselves, their faces tight with frustration. Did she really choose him? One whispered disbelief in his tone. The servant? She can't possibly mean it. Another laughed quietly. Perhaps she is ashamed of us and wants to humiliate the court. But it will not end well for her or for him. Unbeknownst to them, the servant had already noticed the tension. His eyes, calm and unblinking, scanned the arena. He was calculating, observing every reaction, every whisper. But he did not reveal his true power. To the crowd, he was still just a humble servant chosen unexpectedly by the princess. Liara tried to focus on the ritual. Her hands trembled slightly as she performed the ceremonial movements. But she felt the servant's presence near her, a quiet assurance that steadied her. The advisor watched nervously, fearing scandal. Yet even he couldn't deny the grace and intelligence with which the servant handled the ceremony. The first part of the ritual concluded with the presentation of the unity crystal, a symbol of commitment and cooperation. The princess held the crystal in her hands, its light reflecting in her eyes. She glanced at her chosen mate and found him looking back with the same calm, unreadable expression. Something about him made her feel safe, even though she still believed she had chosen the weakest candidate. When the ceremony ended, the princess and the servant were led back to the royal chambers for a private audience. There, the servant continued to demonstrate subtle intelligence and careful attention. He asked questions about the kingdom, the people, and the challenges Liara faced as a ruler. His questions were simple but insightful, prompting her to think carefully and speak with honesty. Liara found herself talking more freely than she had with anyone before. She shared worries about alliances, court politics, and her fear of public shame. The servant listened intently, nodding occasionally, but never interrupting or judging. His presence was steady, grounding her in a way she had never experienced. Outside the palace, rumors spread quickly. The elite warriors were furious at being passed over. Nobles speculated on the princess's motives, and the crowd whispered in confusion and curiosity. Why would she choose the servant? Perhaps he is secretly powerful, or perhaps the princess is reckless. The servant, meanwhile, continued to observe quietly. He did not correct the misconceptions. He let the princess face her fears and learn her own strength. But inside, he was already planning how to protect her, how to ensure that her choice would not lead to disaster. He was not just a servant. He was far more than anyone in the arena realized. As night fell over Valora, the city glowed under the twin moons. Princess Liara stood at a balcony, looking out at the horizon. Her heart still raced from the day's events, but a quiet thought had begun to form. Perhaps there was more to courage than following rules and tradition. Perhaps strength could be hidden in plain sight. The servant appeared behind her, silent as a shadow. "The world may judge your choice today," he said softly, "but sometimes the unexpected holds the greatest power." Liara turned to him, surprised by the clarity in his voice. She wanted to ask more, to understand him, but the moment passed too quickly. He merely bowed and stepped back, blending into the shadows like he had always been unnoticed. That night, the princess could not sleep. Thoughts of the ceremony, the servant, and the strange feeling of safety he inspired kept her awake. She wondered if she had been foolish or if in some way she could not yet comprehend. She had chosen wisely. In the quiet halls of the palace, the servant stood alone, eyes reflecting the twin moons. To anyone else, he was just a humble figure, a simple man chosen by chance. But in truth, he was far more than anyone suspected. He had observed centuries of civilizations, faced countless dangers, and carried a power that could command armies and unite worlds. Yet here, under the soft glow of Valora's moons, he waited patiently. His purpose was not to dominate, but to guide, to protect, and to reveal strength when it was most needed. And as he looked toward the princess, he knew that this ritual was only the beginning of a test, a bond, and a story far greater than either of them could imagine. And so, the first day ended not with triumph, nor with shame, but with quiet anticipation. The princess had chosen the servant, believing she had avoided public embarrassment. The servant had accepted, hiding his true self while subtly beginning to shape events. And the planet of Valora, with all its grandeur and history, seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would come next. The morning light on Valora was pale and serene, casting long shadows across the city of Alindra. The crystal arena, where the decennial mating ritual had begun, now seemed quieter, almost waiting for the next chapter of events to unfold. Princess Liara awoke in her royal chambers with a sense of curiosity and unease. The memory of choosing the humble servant as her mate the previous day lingered in her mind. Every glance, every whisper from the court, reminded her that she had made an unusual choice. She dressed quickly, her thoughts tangled. Why had she picked him? He was not strong, not powerful, not what anyone expected of a mate for a princess. Yet she could not deny the strange calm she felt when he was near. Something about him seemed different, though she could not yet understand why. The servant arrived promptly, as if reading her thoughts. "Good morning, princess," he said softly. His voice was calm, reassuring. There was no hint of arrogance, no pride in the choice the princess had made. Yet there was a quiet strength beneath the surface that she had begun to notice more clearly with each passing hour. "Good morning," Liara replied, her tone cautious. She found herself searching for some clue about him, but he revealed nothing, only smiled faintly. You are nothing like I expected, and nothing is what it seems, princess," he said, bowing slightly. "The world is full of surprises. Some of them are hidden in plain sight." Liara frowned. She did not fully understand, but she felt a stirring of trust in his words. Perhaps, she thought, choosing him had not been an act of shame, but of instinct. The court convened that day for the continuation of the ritual. Elite warriors who had been passed over were tense, their pride bruised. They demanded proof of their strength, hoping to discredit the princess's choice. Liara felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her shoulders. She stood tall, trying to remember why she had chosen the servant in the first place. Even as doubts crept in, the first challenge was announced. A duel of skill and strategy, open to all candidates. The strongest warriors stepped forward, confident in their abilities. The servant followed, silent and composed, drawing curious looks from the crowd. No one expected him to participate, yet the rules of the ritual required his presence. The duel began. The elite warriors displayed incredible skill, their movements sharp and precise. Liara watched anxiously, fearing for her choice. Yet the servant remained calm, observing each fighter with a steady gaze. When his turn came, he did not rely on brute force or flashy moves. Instead, he anticipated every strike, countered with minimal effort, and used the arena itself to his advantage. The crowd gasped. Each maneuver, each subtle action, revealed a skill that no ordinary servant could possess. Lyra's heart raced as she realized that the weak man she had chosen was extraordinary, but in a way that defied expectation. He was graceful, intelligent, and incredibly strategic. The duel ended with him standing unscathed, the elite warriors stunned and humbled. Whispers filled the arena. "Who is he?" "He cannot be a servant." The princess chose wisely, Lyra's advisor. Once worried about public shame, now looked at her with quiet awe. After the duel, the servant stepped aside, still calm, giving Liara space to process the event. "Do you see, princess?" he said quietly. "Sometimes strength is not shown in appearances, but in the mind, the heart, and the will." Liara nodded, her respect growing. She had been so concerned with what others would think that she had not realized her own instinct was guiding her correctly. Perhaps this choice was not about escaping shame, but about recognizing true character. The next challenge came in the form of a council test. The princess and her chosen mate were asked to solve a complex problem involving alliances between clans, trade agreements, and the protection of Valera's people. The elite warriors struggled, often letting pride cloud their judgment. The servant, however, approached the problem methodically, offering solutions that were clever, fair, and just. His knowledge of leadership, strategy, and diplomacy was remarkable. Liara was amazed. She had assumed he was only a servant, someone unimportant and ordinary. Yet every action, every decision revealed a depth of intelligence and capability far beyond expectation. Slowly, she began to understand that her choice had not been an escape from Shamit, had been an encounter with wisdom she could not have anticipated. Outside the arena, rival clans watched carefully. Some were furious at the princess's choice, feeling insulted that a servant had been given such honor. Others whispered that perhaps this was part of a grander plan, though none knew what it might be. The servant's reputation remained hidden, his true identity still a mystery to all but himself. Days passed, and Liara spent more time with her chosen mate. He continued to reveal small glimpses of his ability's calm decision-making, subtle displays of strength, knowledge of languages and cultures, and an uncanny sense of judgment. Liara felt herself growing closer to him, a mix of admiration, curiosity, and trust. She began to wonder what kind of life he had lived before arriving at the palace. One evening, the princess and the servant walked along the balcony of the royal chambers. Looking out over the city, as the twin moons rose, the servant's presence was steady, like a grounding force. Liara found herself speaking freely, sharing her fears, her hopes, and even her secret doubts about the future. "You are not what I thought," she admitted softly. "I believed I chose you to escape shame, but now I see. Perhaps I chose the right person after all." He turned to her, expression calm, but eyes sharp. "You chose wisely, princess. Not for the world, not for appearances, but because your heart saw something true. That is the mark of courage." Liara felt a warmth she could not explain. She realized that this journey, the ritual, the challenges, the whispers, the duels had been more than a test of strength. It had been a test of character, of insight, and of trust. And she had passed, not by following convention, but by listening to her instinct. The final day of the ritual arrived with tension in the air. The elite warriors and nobles gathered for the announcement of the official mate. The princess stepped forward, standing tall beside her chosen companion. The servant's calm presence gave her confidence. A sudden commotion arose as the strongest candidates demanded one last trial, a public test of leadership and courage. The servant accepted, without hesitation, stepping forward with grace. What followed amazed everyone. He orchestrated a series of challenges that tested diplomacy, problem-solving, and compassion. Each demonstration was subtle, precise, and clever. He showed strength not only in action but in thought, guiding the participants toward cooperation rather than competition. The crowd was captivated. Liara watched in awe as the servant revealed a level of mastery that no one had expected from someone dressed as a humble servant. At last he paused and turned to the princess, bowing respectfully. "Princess Liara," he said, "the choice is yours, as it always has been. But know that strength is not measured by appearance, but by heart, mind, and will." A hush fell over the arena. Then the servant did something unexpected. He removed the simple cloak that had concealed his identity. Beneath it was armor of exquisite design, engraved with symbols of the Alpha Clantha, ruling family of the Northern Territories. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The humble servant was none other than the Alpha King, traveling in disguise to observe other cultures and test the wisdom of leaders across planets. Lyra's eyes widened in disbelief. Her mind raced to process the revelation. The man she had chosen to avoid shame, the servant she had thought weak, was in truth one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. And yet in all his power, he had chosen humility, patience, and careful observation. He had allowed her to act freely, to follow her instinct, to grow in courage and judgment. She stepped closer, feeling a mixture of awe and respect. "All this time, you were the Alpha King?" she whispered. He nodded, his expression calm, but eyes kind. "Yes, and all this time, I have watched you, princess. You chose not for appearances, not for fear, but for your own heart. That is the choice of a true leader." The crowd erupted in applause, though many were still in shock. The elite warriors bowed, acknowledging both his strength and her wisdom. Nobles whispered that the princess had displayed incredible courage in making her choice, and the servant's true identity added honor to the decision. Liara turned to him fully, understanding at last. Her embarrassment, her fear of shame, had led her to an encounter that revealed something far greater: the bond of trust, the recognition of character, and the courage to act according to one's heart. The Alpha King stepped forward, taking her hand gently. "Princess Liara, what you have shown during this ritual proves more than wisdom or courage. It proves understanding, insight, and strength of spirit. You have chosen wisely." Liara felt a rush of relief and admiration. "And I thought I was escaping shame," she said with a soft laugh. "Instead, I found someone extraordinary." The Alpha King smiled faintly. "Extraordinary, yes, but not without you. The bond we begin today is built on choice, respect, and trust. That is stronger than any display of power." As the twin moons rose over Valora, casting silver light across the crystal arena, the princess and the Alpha King stood together, united not by appearances or fear, but by courage, wisdom, and mutual respect.